All right, and thank you for joining us for this week's episode of Tête-à-Tête. With me, I have Ellen Whyte. She's a counseling psychologist. You would have seen her in the local papers. She specializes in teaching techniques to manage stress, depression, and anxiety. So, because right now everybody is under a lot of duress due to the uncertainty because of COVID-19, because of loss of jobs. So basically, she helps to deal with everyday issues such as relationship difficulties, work trouble, divorce, fear of socializing, loneliness, relocation stress, and so on. So Ellen is a Scottish Dutch based in Malaysia, and she has clients from all over the world, such as Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam, Hong Kong, Australia, Saudi, India, and a lot of others. So, welcome, Ellen. Thank you for joining me today.
Hi, Hanniz. How are you doing?
I'm great. It's been a very good, bright day. And how about yourself?
Yep, nice long day.
Nice long day.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's a holiday today, so my holidays are very busy because clients are free.
That's true. I guess, but it feels a bit different now with the quarantine still in place. Um, Sometimes holidays feel like work days feel like holidays. It's a very weird feeling.
Yes, for a lot of people, there is now no work-life balance at all. It
Yes,
is almost entirely work.
exactly. And that's why I felt that it's important that you come on my show to see and to help how people can cope with this kind of different mode of working and mode of living. So,
Hmm.
what worries you most when it comes to people's mental health during the pandemic?
Um, well, there's the big things, right? Like we worry about people who are locked in with dangerous people. That's a big issue.
Mhm.
That's not so much my client base because I don't tend to deal with ongoing violence. My clients tend to have the violence in the past and they are out of it and we're doing rehabilitation. Um, but I would say the people are trying to maintain some sort of balance and they are pretending to themselves that this is not too bad. You know, we're staying at home, there are positives, blah, 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 food pandas delivering. And I think it's quite dangerous to underestimate how much stress people are actually under.
Mhm.
They may not realize completely that a lot of the fights that they have are purely stress induced, right?
Right.
And also that little things suddenly become very important.
Mm.
So what you get very typically is people becoming super stressed over things that normally they can ignore because they can leave the house. So let's say you're living 3 generations in a house, right?
Right.
Grandma has always done a little bit of moaning, and so has grandpa.
Yeah.
And the kids kind of put up with it, and the grandchildren just don't even hear it. But when you're all locked together, suddenly it's like a pressure cooker.
Mm.
And it goes nick, 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 nick. And before you know it, you have something going and exploding. And then there's a massive fight. Nobody can get away, right?
Yeah.
And it creeps up on people.
They
It
don't
causes,
realize it.
yes, and it causes a lot of everyday grief. Yeah, people feel guilty and they feel sad and they feel bad about themselves when really it's a pandemic,
And it's
you
the
know?
first time that is affecting the whole world over. So there's no way of escaping from one country to another.
Exactly. Yes. Um, it's it's quite a strange feeling, yeah, not to know what the future is.
Exactly. Unless you claim that you're a fortune teller or something.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So it is seen as a collective crisis.
Hmm.
So what? How does this perspective change? How should people adapt and manage the situation?
I'd say, first of all, don't compare yourself to other people, and don't think just because everybody is in it that therefore it makes it better.
Mm.
Everyone reacts differently, and what you think you see may not be true. So your friend who's posting the kittens, the cats, the whatever, yeah, it looks all happy all the time. But it doesn't mean it's happy all the time. It just means that they're not sharing everything, right?
But
So,
that's the thing, because some people are just used to, keeping everything inside. And in
mhm,
this situation, for them, that's how they cope, right? So how do
mhm.
we encourage them to realize that, it is time to unbottle, or to just talk about it?
Well, it can be quite difficult, um, generally speaking. And let's keep it to Southeast Asia. It is more common for men not to be allowed to show emotions than for women.
Hmm.
Okay? So boys are taught, really from very young, be brave. And if there's something wrong, you have to fix it. So they grow up thinking, one, shut up, and two, if you are going to talk, you need a solution, right?
Yeah.
So you need to unlearn that. And it takes a lot. Yeah. You need a lot of supportive people around to tell you it's okay to talk. You don't need to give solutions,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
For women, it comes slightly differently. We are given more lessons about emotions, right? Little girls very often are taught to interpret emotions, to share them. There's a group think going on, right? But when you get into pressure situations, especially in societies where people become more authoritative as they get older,
Hmm.
you get very strange situations where the people at the bottom, the younger people, are not allowed to express emotions
Right.
without the older people talking down to them.
Right.
So they don't talk. Because who wants to be scolded and given advice all the time? When
Hmm.
really all you want to say is, I'm having a lousy time.
Yes,
Yeah,
and teenagers will feel that even more, because
exactly.
they have their hormones raging, and they cannot express themselves.
Yes.
So it's a double whammy for them.
Especially if mom and dad say, well, it's nothing like 1980 when I was blah, blah, blah. You think, oh, I'm never talking to you again.
Okay, so obviously our lives are changing whatever age you are, and how do we help uh, those taking care of the families to deal with everything happening around them, because they are like the head of the household, for example.
Yeah, that's an expression I'm allergic to.
Mm.
The head of the household in my house is Tic Tac, the youngest cat. Um, I think it is less than helpful to start giving people job titles in a
Mm.
family. They're all
Mm.
supposed to be in it together. Um, I think the way to deal with it is this: you start talking to each other without judging and without offering fixes and telling people what to do. In psychology, it's called active listening. All right, and it's actually quite difficult to learn. What you have to do is you have to sit not directly opposite someone because it's kind of aggressive. You sit kind of sideways,
Hmm.
yeah, and you keep your hands down and you look, but not too much.
If not,
You
it will
do
be
what
quite
you're
spooky.
doing. You're doing this thing, awesome, right?
Okay.
And then you ask open questions.
Right.
Okay, so all right, let's pretend you're upset by the COVID crisis. All
I am
right,
so upset. Yes.
okay. So what exactly are you upset about?
Um. Well, pretending okay, because I think I'm quite okay. But yeah, but I think I'm if like a regular person, I would be upset that I cannot um earn as much as I could before, because,
Mm,
for example, my job would rely on face-to-face encounters. So I would be
Right.
upset about that.
Yeah. So you're a bit worried about money in the future and what might happen because it's
Hmm.
somewhat uncertain. Is that right?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you become anxious, how do you know that you're anxious? What happens to your body?
I don't know. We
Oh,
tense up.
that's interesting.
We tense up, I think. Some people lose sleep, maybe.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. What's happening in your head when you feel anxious?
Mm, for me, when I feel anxious, it's more about I I can't I wouldn't be able to think straight.
Uh-huh.
You might feel uneasy, I guess.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah. So when you become anxious, you know because your body tenses up and you're a bit blur.
Mm.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. How would you advise your best friend to de-stress?
Um, I would just let her or him say to just be okay with switching off.
Hmm.
Just to get get away from the news, get away from people trying to influence him to do whatever they need him to do, and just do what he wants to do.
Right. Right. So for you, it sounds as though anxiety is also linked to being in charge of your own destiny. It's an autonomy issue.
Right.
It's interesting. Huh? Okay. What we were just doing was the act of listening. Yeah. You talk, I restate what you say, and then I give a teeny weeny push, and then I say, what do you think? And then you
Mm.
keep talking. All right. This works for everyone. Yeah.
It does. Yes.
So if families do that, they will begin to understand h- how they recognize they are stressed because a lot of people don't know when.
Right.
And if you know how it works for you, then you can say, oh, wait a minute, I've got that thing going on with the tenseness. Oh, I'm getting anxious. And then you follow your own advice and you de-stress.
Mm.
Yeah?
Yep.
So very, very simple. But one of your questions in the pre-interview was, when do you know you're in trouble?
Right.
Okay, right. It can be quite hard to tell. There are various common things that people should look out for. The most common is when you start losing interest in things that you normally like, it's a sign that you're being pushed a bit too far.
Hmm. I've come across that sometimes. I love my job, but there
Mhm.
are times when you just don't want to do it.
Right. If your sleep becomes disrupted, everything else is going to follow because sleep is the natural healer. If you don't sleep right, you can't concentrate, you are low on energy. Depression naturally follows lack of sleep, right? So it's very important that you sleep.
Mm.
The other thing is don't go on crazy diets
Mm.
because if you don't eat properly, your body doesn't work properly. If your body doesn't work properly, it is going to make other things more complicated. Yeah,
Right.
so you should eat properly, sleep properly, be hydrated, watch out for what you're interested in.
Mm-hmm.
If you're no longer interested, start thinking about that. The other things for people who are slightly younger and slightly older, so say 18 and under and 55 and over,
Okay.
one of the interesting things is personal cleanliness.
Aha.
Look at nails. Look at what they're wearing. Look at their hair. Um, for girls, yeah, teenage girls, are they still painting their nails?
Mm-hmm. If they are,
Yes.
it should be okay. So
Yes. If they've always painted their nails and they're still painting them, you're fine.
they're still
If
caring about
it's,
how they look. Is that right?
yes, it's the little things you should watch out for. right? For boys, at the moment, it tends to be body image, upper muscles. Yeah. If they're working out a lot and they just suddenly stop, or they're no longer interested, you've got to ask, what's going on? Why are they not interested in how they look? Right? It's a very delicate balance, right? The other thing, let me see, lack of interest in things, sleeping, eating, concentration. When you are stressed and depressed, very often your concentration goes. If you find that you've always been a reader and now you can't read a book anymore, or you've always watched Korean drama, but now you're sort of 20 minutes in and you're saying, oh God, they all look the same and I can't figure it out. There you go. Yeah, another sign.
Yeah.
And for anxiety, one of the things you should look out for is rashes, nervous rashes.
Physical. Okay.
Yes. We don't have time, but the whole thing about anxiety is that it's a full stress reaction that involves the body as well as the mind. And in this climate, if you are overstressed, you sweat a lot. Yeah, you get sudden sweat, stop, start, stop, and it leaves you with rashes. Yes, it's something to look out for.
Interesting. I've never associated that there would be a physical symptom to it. It's something new.
Oh, really? Okay.
Wow.
I'll give you my 60-second anxiety speech. Right.
Okay.
Anxiety is there as an alert, right? It is there to say, if you're walking through the jungle and you meet a tiger, you need your anxiety because it starts in the brain, but it works in the body. It says, we need to decide what we're going to do and we need to be fast. So we're either going to run or we're going to fight, right? And you went to school, so you remember your flight or fight syndrome.
Right. Yes.
Right. So lots of things happen. First thing, there's a flood of hormones, right? At the same time, you speed up your breathing, right? Why? It's to pull in oxygen that goes into your blood that powers your muscles. That's why anxious people feel tense. And that's why they get sore bones and sore muscles. Yeah. Other things that happen, your digestion stops. The body says, at the moment, we're fighting a tiger, we'll digest later.
Right.
Okay? That's why you get the upset stomachs. With the breathing and the oxygen and the getting ready, you also sweat.
Yes.
So that your body cools down. That's when you get the rashes from. Right? So, usually, stress is a really good thing because it gets you in fighting or running condition. But if you suffer from anxiety, you get false alarms. You might have 20 false alarms a day. And that is why you get the physical reactions.
Right. Yeah, you're always on guard.
Yes. You go up, down, up, down, up, down. It's exhausting.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay, those are good symptoms to watch out for. And I have one more question for you, and before we sum it up. So obviously we need to be social distancing to keep the virus under control, somewhat. But it doesn't help that we lose a lot of human contact. It's not the same when you're on Zoom or on a video call. It's just you need to be face to face with the person to really connect. Some of us recharge by being surrounded by friends and family, and with social distancing, how do we keep it? How do we keep physically away but still emotionally intact?
I don't think you can. If you are the kind of person who wants to touch people, then I don't see a substitution for that. I know that in Western Europe, they're now bringing in kind of small communities where 2 or 3 families decide to mix.
Right.
And that is probably what's going to be happening here next.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 2 or 3 households that get together, so you can do your hugging and get your extended socializing going on.
Hmm.
But there is nothing that can substitute for a hug if that's what you like.
Hugs do help. I think it helps to calm people down. But not just that, it's just that not physically touching, but when we go out, when we meet friends, uh, it's when we have a cup of coffee or tete together. It's just something that is part of our nature, right? We are social
It's
beings.
part of your nature. It's not part of mine.
You're not.
No, not at all.
I don't know. I would consider myself an introvert, so I energize when I'm alone.
Uh-huh.
But I do need some form of interaction. Um, Once or twice a month is good for me.
Right.
So, but some people need it much, much more. They need to go out every day, or they need to be in the spotlight all the time. So for them, this would be a very tough time.
Okay, but that's 2 different things. You're talking about socializing face to face and hugging, and the two are very different.
Yes, this is more
So,
socializing.
all right.
Mm.
Um, See what I do? I'm not a touchy, feely person at all. I
Mm-hmm.
would be very happy if strangers would stop touching me completely, which in Malaysia is not going to happen. But my neighbors and we talk over the wall,
Mm-hmm.
and it gives us distance, but we're still connecting. And that might be something that you can do, in that instead of sitting at a table, which is still not allowed, right?
Yes.
You have a slightly wider space, but if you put an object between you, it won't feel as though you're distant,
Mm.
right? Think about it this way. If you were standing in your driveway, right, one of you at the gate, one of them at the house, it feels weird,
Yeah.
right? Would
Yes.
it feel weird if there were a car in the middle?
No.
There you
So that
go.
would help.
Yep. Talk over a fence, talk over a wall, take a step back.
Good advice. Hmm. I think that could help. That could be a proposal for those who need it really a lot
Yeah.
more.
Yeah.
So, okay, I would recap our session. To recognize being anxious, basically losing of interest in things that you always had interest in.
That's
You're
the
not
question.
sleeping. Yeah, you're not sleeping well.
Hmm.
You're not eating well.
Hmm.
And one more, what was there?
You don't look after yourself. You're not interested in the things you usually like. You're
Yes.
feeling either blank or hopeless. Your eating schedule is off. You can't concentrate properly.
Mm.
Um, yeah, those are all the beginnings of something.
Mm.
Another common one that is not mentioned often is irritability.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, suddenly being bad tempered about things that normally you're okay with. That's a fairly common sign.
Okay. So
Yeah.
yeah, if you are watching this and if you are feeling what we have mentioned earlier, or there's 6 points actually, then we would suggest that speak to someone. There is nothing to be ashamed of. This is a it's something that you should be doing to help yourself. And I think sometimes people are afraid to ask for help because have they're used to always helping people. So I would strongly suggest you just talk, share about how you feel. Don't feel embarrassed to look for psychologists. Don't be embarrassed to talk about mental health because it does somehow affect our physical outlook after that as well, right? They're all linked. And if you do need help, Ellen Whyte can be contacted to speak further in detail. So, Ellen, would you like to share how people can reach out to you?
Go to lepak.com.
Can you repeat that, please?
Lepak.com. Lepak.
.com.
Yeah.
All right.
You can also, there are now government helplines as well.
Mm.
Yeah. They're all published in a newspaper.
Yes. We also get the SMS messages.
Yeah. I'm a private psychologist, so I cost money.
Of course.
But there are various NGOs that will help you for free. You could look them up too. Some of them just do telephone chat, and it's not therapy. And others will offer you therapy. So my advice is, if you don't really know, have a look at the newspaper, because every day they publish lists. And if you still don't know, send me a note and I'll send you a list.
Lepak.com.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's where you ask them questions before you decide together whether you should proceed or not. Is that right?
Actually, I would give you a list of all the places where you can get free help.
Okay, great. Okay, so thank you so much, Ellen.
Nice to talk to you.
It was my pleasure having you, and thank you. I know it's been a long day, and I hope you have a good rest of the evening.
Yeah, I'm going to go and cook dinner.
All right then.
Yeah.
Take care.
All right. See you soon. Bye.
All right. Bye.